So the reason why evil will always fail is because of this. Hakma and Musa, wisdom and discipline or restraint, falls despise. Now, the word for avil, the Mishley has a few different words for stupid people, and the worst of them is this, the avil. This is a person who never gets it, who keeps making the same mistake over and over again and never learns, doesn't contemplate it, doesn't get through. It's a very interesting thing. But I was listening to an interview by one of the negotiators, one of the guys who's trying to negotiate with Hamas. And he said a fascinating thing. He said they are only starting to realize, Ita, hey, welcome. Zita. Forgot the Z. Zita.
No worries. A rose by any other name.
A rose was sweet by any other name. That's right. That's right. Very good. So I was listening to a speaker who's one of the negotiators trying to negotiate some kind of deal with Hamas, and he said they're just starting to realize that they're in a lost cause. Like they bit off too much than they can chew, and that sparked a concept in Mishley. I put it there in the chat. Chapter 1, verse 7. Yiras Hashem Reishis Das, which we'll talk about. Hachma and Musa Avili Musa. Wisdom and discipline or restraint, the fools despise. So the reason why evil will always fail is because of this idea. They don't know restraint. In other words, if Hitler had waited another year, the Second World War would have been a piece of cake for him. Well, it would have been a very different story at the very least. He was on the verge of discovery. All the scientists, the nuclear scientists, well, not all the nuclear scientists. Sorry, not all the, but a lot of the big guys were German, and for sure the rocket scientists were all German. So if it kept the war, if they kept peace until they developed these very sophisticated weapons, it would have been a very different kind of war. The same thing with Hamas. If Hamas had waited until they got a coordinator with Hezbollah and Iran, this would have been or they could have been a much more massive force. But evil people, they always go for the shortest,
quickest gratification.
Yeah, the most, as soon as they can, they do. Whatever they can do, they do. Right? In a certain way, it's like children. The children don't know any patience, and that's part of the process of parenting, is to teach them, we'll have it tomorrow. It's a very good, Rav Yaakov Weinberg always used to say, teach it is good. It's good to tell them no. No is a very good answer. Not a consistent basis, but nevertheless, it's a very good thing that they understand that they have to wait for something. So the villain, the idiots, they don't like discipline and they don't like restraint. They despise it. As soon as they can do whatever they can do, and that very much sums up these people. And it's to our advantage, because if they had more restraint than they did, they were planning this at least a year. Some estimates say 2 years. If they had done it, if they'd been planning it 5 years, God forbid, who knows what terrible things would have happened. So as soon as they had the opportunity to carry out their rishus, their evil, they did it. But what's also interesting is Yiras Hashem Reishis Das. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And it's fascinating to see unfortunately, in a very terrible way, that this is history all over again. You know, we within our own memory, we all hear that after the Second World War, that we weren't going to make the same mistake twice. The comparisons between this and the Second World War are shocking.
How so?
In which way? What do you mean, how so?
Why? I'm not clear as to why you're comparing the two.
Well, you had somebody stand up and say, "I'm going to go kill all the Jews."
Oh, I understand now. Of course they're gonna lose.
Right? And after the Second World War, many of the Jews, every Jew, you know, next time we hear someone say that, we're going to take them seriously and we're going to deal with that. Right? And here you are, right, a week later, just a little over a week later, and it's incredibly embarrassing. Obviously, it's horrendous. There's no question about that. But it's shocking. It's so shocking that I saw a report that one leftist activist committed suicide. Mind-boggling. And there's a lot of people are waking up that this is, this was a terrible thing. Is there a problem?
Why did he commit suicide? What did he...
Because he said, I believed them. I believed Hamas. They promised me they were only interested in, territorial gains, their independence, freedom, all the silliness that not just silliness but evil that these people promulgate. It's all about self-determination and all kinds of other things. So, and there's a few arguments I think it's important to get out there that people need to understand, because despite even if you go with the idea that the Palestinians have suffered tremendously, which is clearly not true, but even if you go with the idea that they are subjugated and all this kind of other silliness, but even if you go with the idea, they certainly did not suffer worse than blacks did in America in the last 300 years. You can't compare it. Yet you will not find a single atrocity of that kind ever committed by a black man. There's no justification for this kind of behavior. The people like I forget his name now, the professor, sorry, his name is, I'm sure it'll come to me, who was saying, you got to see both sides of the story here. There's no two sides of the story. It's an interesting thing. I was on a book tour a few years ago, and one of the speakers, one of the other people who speak, I forget her name, Laurie something, and she got up to speak, very sweet little lady, young woman. She got up to speak and she said, I was going through divorce with my husband, her ex-husband, and one night when it was his night for hair custody, in the middle of the night he got up, took a gun and shot their two children, right? And she wrote a book about it. I mean, nobody, I was, at the same conference, nobody came up to her and said, well, did you used to burn the toast? Like, what did you do that made him do what he did? Maybe you did call his mother a terrible person. I don't know. Right? No one said such a thing or would say such a thing. There are certain crimes that have no justification.
In general, crime does not have a justification, but in general, crime does not have a justification. In general. But the level of this is beyond. I mean, this is clearly either you side on the side of humanity or you side on the side of barbarism. Like, choose one side. Either you're with God or without. Like, pick a side.
So we have to ask a very difficult question. The first question is, how did we miss it? Right? I mean, I've got a video of people like Meir Kahana, and there were many, practically every Orthodox rabbi in the world was saying this is going to happen. It was clear as day
really?
to people who learn Torah.
Come on, even Rav Noach was saying it way back when he was saying, how is it that we're like letting people in Ashkelon and Sidorot deal with all these rockets all the time and not doing anything about it?
No, when Rabin gave the Palestinians 10,000 guns, when Ariel Sharon pulled out the Gaza Strip, when Ehud Barak pulled out Lebanon, everybody was saying, and countless others, Shimon Peres and all of these guys, Yair Lapid won't join the unity government because he can't get his hands around the idea that the whole Zionist dream is out the window. We're in a different world today. We're in a different world. That the idea that we could be a nation like every other nation is gone, because no nation has to deal with this kind of stuff. In the height of everything, whether it was Al-Qaeda, whether it was ISIS, or any of these people, they never targeted just because of who they are. This they didn't, and committed these kind of atrocities. This they didn't do. So we're dealing with a hate of Jews that defies explanation if the Torah isn't true. Once you accept the Torah is true, but if the Torah is not true, then how come? And the Zionists they've been adamant about not accepting this idea for 70 years, and pretty much 99% of the whole country is in unison. It's all over. There's a difference between us and them. We stand for something good. They stand for something bad, and it's only us, and it's only them. It's a remarkable thing. This has been a turning point in world history, for sure Jewish history, right, which is world history. So how do we miss it? How do we get here? How do we miss it? To start with, how do we miss it? And that's the first part of Mishley. Yiras Hashem Reishis Das is a mind-boggling line. He says, Yiras Hashem Reishis Das. Chapter 1, verse 7. Yiras Hashem Reishis Das. The beginning of knowledge is the fear of God. In other words, if you don't fear God, you'll never get anything. See, we're quite clear, you should be clear, that up until this week, that this was going to happen. If you weren't clear, okay. But if you did know, you wonder, how did people miss it? How did people miss it? And the answer is very simple. Because if you don't have Yiras Hashem, if you don't worry that you might be wrong, which is essentially what Yiras Hashem is, if you're not worried that you might not have the right answer, if you think that maybe we're just new on the scene, the Zionists are new on the scene, and they think they figured it out, and they're smarter than anybody else. When you start to think like that, you can miss all kinds of things. And I'm not meaning just to simply put down the Zionists, but that applies to us. If this could be people whose lives and children's lives are on the line, how many things do you think we are missing? Like, it's a very sobering concept. It's easy to think, I wouldn't be so stupid. And if you knew this was happening, that's very good. But how do you make sure you're not missing tremendous things? And maybe the second question, how do they finally get it? See, it's very easy to say, I talked about this a little this last week, it's very easy to say that it's obvious now. And you see clearly it isn't obvious now. Or I should put it differently, it is obvious now. But there are some people who are truly evil, and they're not only marching that it didn't happen, but even if they admit that it did happen, They're glad that it happened. They think it's justified that it happened, which is mind-boggling. There's no other atrocity done to anybody that they would say it's it's acceptable to go kill little babies. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But nevertheless, so it shows you the hatred they have towards Jews. It's only Jews. No one else can do these kind of things. No one else would do these kind of things. It's the hatred you have towards Jews. So how did the light go off? So there's a concept in Torah. It's not a matter of it became obvious. It's not a matter of they reasoned it out. If you listen to the people who've switched sides in Israel, who are now like flatten the Gaza Strip, that's how they're talking. Flatten the Gaza Strip. These are, die in the wall liberals up until last weekend. All of a sudden now they completely changed their tune. I remember talking to Wolfenson, I think his name Wolfenson. I forget his name exactly. He was the chairman of the president, I forget his title, of the IMF. He used to run the IMF. And when he retired, I called him. And he was trying to tell me how they're all going to make peace in the Gaza Strip. This was as Ariel Sharon was pulling out the Israelis. They're all going to make peace. We're going to give the Gaza. They wouldn't listen. So how are these people all getting it now? They're all getting it. So it's not because they've come to their senses and they thought it out. That's not what's going on. There's a concept in Torah called Kiddush Hashem. When someone dies, Kiddush Hashem, he dies just because he's a Jew. A light goes off in the world. People see things they couldn't see before. And this must be the case. Because I heard Biden, Eric Adams, the same thing. Eric Adams has got a little bit more going for him, but these people are not thinking it through. It's not because they've reasoned it out. They're genuinely moved. The awareness of what has happened, of what's going on, has hit them. Like just as much. That's what King David, that's what Shlomo Melech is saying. Yiras Hashem, Reishis Dak. When you see God, you get it. When you see God, that's what Kiddush Hashem is. You bring God into the world. These people died, these Kadoshim died Kiddush Hashem. And when you bring God into the world, people see things that they never saw before. It's a mind-boggling thing. We're in a different world. Okay, any other questions? We're all good?
Yeah. Yes. So, yes, Rabbi, thank you.
So there's some other ideas we should also learn from this. And something the Israelis have realized as well. There's certain things in life which are very much applicable to our own personal lives. That there's certain things that no amount is tolerable. There's a lot of criticism going around. I think it's mostly from the left, the diehards, the crazy diehards who are upset that Netanyahu didn't see it coming. But even though it was planned under a few different prime ministers, and no one saw it coming, intelligence failed, everything failed. And the answer is because just the evil cannot be tolerated. In a certain sense, the physical world is a parable to the ruchnius world, to the spiritual world. So just like there's no amount of cancer that is tolerable. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but there's no amount that's like, this is okay, right? You can have a cold, you can have a headache. There's some things you can tolerate, but cancer is one of those things. There's no amount that's tolerable. The same thing with evil. If you tolerate any amount of evil, you're in big trouble. You're not going to like how it's going to end up. And on a personal level, that's true too. So for instance, we all understand that if you're an alcoholic, there's no amount of alcohol that's okay. You have to expunge it from your life. There's no amount, because as soon as you have anything, it's going to take over. So the same thing is true with this concept, with what's going on here. And the Israelis have come, I don't really think they completely get it. I'm hoping the Almighty is going to fill in the gap. Maybe I'm hoping I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but they definitely get a lot more than they got 2 weeks ago. But they do understand there's no amount that's tolerable. We have to completely expunge Hamas, despite the fact that they're only one part of the problem. The idea that they think they can live with Iran and they can live with Hezbollah is the same issue. So I don't know whether they're just saying that because they don't want to scare off Biden, or they're saying it because they believe it. I'm not sure. I hope it's only the first, not the latter, but we'll see. But at least they got some of it. It's interesting. Just a little bit of a digression. David Amelech famously said, "Better to suffer at the hands of God than the hands of man." Right? So it's very easy to understand. We talked about this last week. Well, more people die from COVID than any of this. Right? But people are not going crazy. A simple example. And people got upset with me for that. But I need to talk about it. So the simple example, you're driving along the road and a deer hits your car. So, you take care of the deer, take care of the car, and you move on. You literally don't move on, but you got to get another car. 6 months later, you're driving along and a drunk driver hits your car. Same amount of damage, but this time you're mad as anything. When it's the hands of man, your reaction is very different. And it's not good, because you get resentful, you get mad, you get angry, you lose your equilibrium, you can't daven. It's a whole different game when it's the hands of man. Now, you might say, rightfully so, well, isn't everything the hands of God? And that's absolutely true. And if you see that what happens to you is from the hands of God, then you won't have resentment. Resentment is the punishment you get for not seeing what's happening to you as the hand of God. So you should really see it as the hand of God. Now, we're not there yet on what just happened. We're not there yet. But we can see it for the Holocaust. In Israel, and I was talking about it, I've been talking about it for a long time now, that in Israel, up until last week, the vitriol, the animosity, the antipathy between the two different groups, and it's mostly the religious against the secular, but it was defined as pro-Supreme Court reform and anti-Supreme Court reform. The vitriol was terrible, and people would keep telling me that the hatred and the divide in Israel is enormous, and I was just speaking to deaf ears, and I was telling you, you're making a big mistake. It's not true. There's a tremendous love underneath between all the different groups in Israel that you don't have in America. I gave a whole speech about it on Tisha B'Av. It's absolutely not true. And how do you know it's not true? Well, now it's clear it's not true. It's something like, I have a cousin. So his sister, two cousins, him and his sister, he became religious, and his sister didn't. She married out, and he married a nice Jewish girl and lives in Neve Yaakov. And she didn't talk to him for years. But then she got leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant. Who's the perfect match? Her brother, right? So all of a sudden she's talking to him. And there's another thing Mishley says, King Solomon says, right? A brother is made for pain, for suffering. Right? A friend will help you out now and again, but every brother is there when the trouble gets really bad. You call your brother or sister. So she called him up. He came over. They did the transplant. He was there for a long time, and he had to be in isolation. You have to be quarantined. It's very difficult, and he wouldn't take any money for it. Right? He's a big tzaddik. He wouldn't take any money for it. They wanted to pay him because they're well off, but he wouldn't take any money for it. Big Kiddush Hashem. So you see, you say to him, oh, I can't talk to him, I hate him, blah, 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 blah. Right? Those are things people say. You have to look behind the scenes and see if they really mean it. And you see that they don't mean it. Because when this happens, all of a sudden, right, because everybody knows we're in the same boat, they're going to come kill all of us. It's all of us. And even though most of the people who died in this tragedy were mostly not religious. They're mostly not religious. Nevertheless, the religious feel it just as much as anybody else because we're all Jews. It's an absolute mind-boggling thing. So how am I going to tie this back into Mesilas Yesharim? So maybe next week we'll get back to where we were. But the last line, let's just look at the last line. It's an amazing last line. Look on page 162. If you have the art scroll version of the Mesilas Yesharim, it's the end of chapter 22. Let's go from page 161, the previous paragraph on the previous page. It is certain that humility, so humility removes many obstacles from man's path and draws him closer to many good things. For a person who possesses humility will have minimal concerns for this world and will thereby not be envious of its vanities. Furthermore, his company will be very pleasant. His company is very pleasant and people approve of him. It is obvious that such a person will be brought neither to anger nor argument. Rather, all that he does is done quietly and calmly. Fortunate is the person who has the privilege to acquire this virtue. Our sages of blessed memory have said, just as wisdom made a wreath for its head, humility made a heel for its soul. The entire expanse of wisdom cannot compare to it. This is clear. Right? In other words, humility is better. All of wisdom, the smartest guy in the world. But you don't have humility. Humility is better than that. Right? Humility is better than that. How did the Jews miss it these last 70 years? Didn't have humility. Came out of the Holocaust. We figured it out. We know what we're doing. We're going to build a country. We're not going to trust these rabbis anymore. The old ways are out. Right? We're going to build Jewish communities in America. And that all disappeared. All the kids married out. We're going to build a secure country in Israel, the best tech, the best army, the best training, the best schools, and all of it didn't help. Right? Humility. You don't have humility? So there's a saying they have in the West. You'd rather be lucky than right. In other words, that might be the right business, and this might be the right stock, and this might be the right investment, and all the other things, but you lose. You'd rather be lucky. I don't know why it won. I'd rather be lucky. You could be right and lose. You understand? You see, we are in life. The reason why evil has an advantage, the reason why you can never win against evil, the evil will eventually lose for the reasons we said before. But the reason why evil has an advantage is because it will always find a way to get through your weaknesses. This is the beginning of Mesilas Yesharim. He quotes the Chazal that say, Rasha, the evil one, seeks to kill the Tzaddik. But don't worry, God will save him. Meaning, if God doesn't save you, you're done. There is no defense, as they say in Harry Potter. There's no defense against the dark arts. The evil will always find a way, and that's what happened here. You can have high walls, deep trenches, security cameras, listening devices, the best intelligence in the world. And don't think it's just Israel. America, to 9/11, the biggest army in the world, the strongest buildings, the best, the biggest intelligence agency in the world, and they missed it. A bunch of ragtag thugs came in on 9/11 and created all kinds of havoc. Because there is no defense. If evil wants to get through, if you let evil, eventually they will find a way to get you. You cannot plug in all the holes. There is some way that they're going to find your weak spot. Everything has a weak spot. So, but that's just true of evil. In life in general, we have no idea what we're doing. We are smart, but when it comes to the options in life, I always give the example. I hate when this happens, right? You're flying to Israel and someone opens the door, right? It always ruins my day, right? And you've got your seatbelt on, but everybody else doesn't. And everyone gets sucked out, right? So it's just you and your family, right? So you go up to the cockpit and there's no one in there, right? Now, the average jumbo jet has approximately 1,000 dials and buttons, right? And you hear a warning signal coming through the speaker, warning, impact in 10 minutes. Right, what do you do? So in that scenario, anything you do and nothing you do are equally bad choices. You're toast. You're never going to press the right button. Hey, you've seen too many movies. I'd like to give it maybe a better example would help. Right? You happen to be an observer in an open heart surgery, right? And the surgeon passes out and they give the knife to you, right? His heart is out here, right? And you got to finish off the job. The guy's dead. There's no possible way that I'm going to be able to you can be speaking to whoever you want. They can on the radio. It doesn't matter. There's no way you're going to be able to walk through this, right? If you don't know what you're doing, right? Life is more complicated than that. Every moment of every day is filled with decisions that we have to make that we have no idea what we're doing. As the Torah points out, we're like blind men in darkness. We don't know what we're doing, don't know where we're going. Hindsight's wonderful, but at the present time, it's just impossible to be able to see all the variables. We've got all the nuances. You're never going to get it. Now, you cannot accidentally be a great golfer. You cannot accidentally play a great game of chess. You can't accidentally do only in movies can little kids fly fighter jets. In real life, things just don't happen like that, right? Success only happens because you know exactly what you're doing. So therefore, he says, all of wisdom is nothing compared to humility. If you get out of the way, and that's the greatness of the Jewish people. The people who said, I am nothing, that's what King David, Abraham, Moshe said, I am nothing, in the various formations. They didn't just say it, they believed it, they knew it. Simcha Weinberg told me the story that we have the letters of Rabbi Kiva Eger and other people like this. Right? He applied for the job as janitor in the nearby synagogue. Right? He didn't think anything of himself. That's not like, he should have realized. That's the secret to Torah. The more you don't think about yourself, the more you'll see in life. That's the whole secret of understanding what our decisions are. And it's easy to see with other people. The people who are concerned with themselves can't see what else is going on. The less you're concerned about yourself, the more you see what's going on. That's humility. Praise God, we will all be gifted with it.
Who are some examples of that, Rabbi?
Of humility, great humility. The Rashi also, the letters, Simcha told me, the letters that the people would write to Rashi, and he would say, I don't know why you're writing to me. There are people that know more than me, and he would quote people. And the people he was quoting were his students. Right? I heard Rav Noach say this at more than one occasion, I know nothing. And he wasn't saying it to pretend to be humble, he just felt it. That's how.
I'm sorry. It's like a paradox, because if he knew nothing, then he couldn't have created Esha Torah, and he couldn't have taught anything if he really, really knew nothing. In the scheme of the Almighty, yes. If you're doing a comparison, then yes, we know nothing.
I understand it. You see, it's easy to understand. You see, when you think about, how much do you know about parenting? So you realize you look at yourself and go, I know nothing. But then how did you raise such great kids? I don't know. It's funny because if you ask people who raise the best kids, how did you do it? Invariably the answer will be, I have no idea.
Because they tried everything, since they felt like they knew nothing.
They didn't think they knew anything. It's like, you get out of the way. It's the parents who think they know what they're doing are the most difficult people. They're the worst parents. The same thing is true in business. It's true in everything. The business leader. I'm sure I've told you this story. But I was speaking at one of these Fortune magazine summits, and the headline speaker was Jim Collins. He's a very famous business writer. And he wrote the book Good to Great and Built to Last. They were New York Times bestsellers. And I think he's a Stanford professor. And he wrote this book, What Makes a Great CEO. I don't think that was the title, but that was the theme of the book. What makes a great CEO? Great CEO may have been the title. But it was basically going through the records from a scientific point of view. What makes a great CEO? Like, why are some people just like phenomenal? And he did all kinds of financial statistics to see great companies and under this CEO what they did. And he said the evidence showed. These were his words. The evidence showed what makes a great CEO. And when I saw it, I was shocked. He said, "What's that? Humility." And he said the proof is. The single most common line that the new CEO would say when the board of directors would go to him and say, or her, we want you to run the company, the most common line they would say is, you got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy. It's not for me. I can't do this, right? So in the break, I went up to him and said to him, Mr. Collins, I like your talk, blah, blah, blah. But you should know that that's what the number one quality of Moses was, right? And I didn't realize this, but he knew his Bible, for a non-Jew. He knew his Bible. And he was viscerally shocked, because here he thought I'm a Stanford professor, no one's going to tell me something. No. And here's the Bible has said what he thinks he's came to is figured out. And he said to me, you're right. Because when God went to Moses and said, I want you to lead the Jewish people, he said, you got the wrong guy. The same line. But it's true. Humility makes great leadership. Not just leadership, but a great life. It's a good quality.
But why is it better than wisdom?
Because we're not smart enough. We'll never figure it out. We can't get all the ideas, all the answers. Life is far too complicated. It's like the brain surgeon. You can't, and that's a small, tiny bit of what all the variables in life. We can't see all the different variables that are going on in any situation. So humility, to be able to sit back and go, what am I missing? That's the key to making great decisions and living a great life. I was with Rav Noch many, many times, and we were faced with things, and he would often say things like that just blew us away, because he had no arrogance to him, and he would say, it's because they don't trust us, or because we blew it, or all kinds of things that like really nailed the concept, because when you get out of the way, you can really see what's really going on. Very important, very powerful.
It's almost like you're saying the cause is more important than the ego.
What do you mean the cause is more important?
In other words, what Rav Noach Weinberg was trying to do was bring people back to Hashem. So
yes,
he wasn't interested in getting accolades or being right or whatever the case might be related to his ego. He was just interested in bringing Hashem's children back to him. That's it.
Oh.
So since he was committed to that cause, he didn't have his ego in the way, so he was able to be humble.
Oh, that's a great point. That's really what the next point in Mishley Hashem. We've got to do it now. Okay, I was going to close here. Now that you said that, we've got to cover it, okay? Because it's exactly what the Mishley Hashem is going to say. Let's read it, page 156 in the Mishley Hashem. Sorry to keep everyone up so late, but it's a phenomenal point. So he says all of this, when we're talking about that, don't take credit for anything, all these kind of things, right? He says that's true, right? Is relevant for one who's capable of internalizing, someone who all of this, however, is only relevant for one who is capable of internalizing, someone who will be like Avraham, Moshe, and David, and the other pious individuals we have mentioned, right? About anachnu, but we, in other words, they don't take credit for all the accomplishments you've made, right? So that's only relevant to Moshe, who had the accomplishments, but me, I think it's like I'm a big tzaddik that I did Netilas Yadayim this morning, I'm wearing a kippah. Look, and it's on straight sometimes, right? Our accomplishments are nothing on nothing on nothing on nothing, right? That we are orphans, born of orphans. We have no need for this, but we carry within us so many faults that it does not take analysis to perceive how lowly we are. All of our wisdom is like nothing. For our greatest of sages cannot be regarded as anything other than the disciple of the disciples of fallen generation. Right? Now he's talking in the 1700s. When you have Rav Yosef Kaivo and other Gedolim of that stature. They're not talking about today in 2023. You understand? He's saying we're nothing. This is very, and he was talking to a malach, right? Moshe Chaim Zato. So like, as today, I haven't talked to malach in a very long time, right? This is very important to understand and be cognizant of, as it will prevent our hearts from swelling needlessly. Rather, we must recognize that our understanding is superficial and our minds extremely weak. That ignorance is widespread among us, that error is multiplying, and that the knowledge that we do possess is minuscule. Therefore, conceit is surely out of place. Indeed, what is called for is shame, loneliness, and loneliness. This is obvious. So, what do you mean? This is appropriate for these for people like Moshe, right? For people like Abraham, right? But for us, it's not, because these people live with a great purpose. We think we're big tzaddikim because we put 25 cents in the pushka can, right? We know what we're living for. Is then they live with great purpose when you have and that's exactly your point. When you live with purpose, when you have something that's crucial, you get out of the way. If God forbid, you're fighting in 1948 or the Warsaw Ghetto, or you're on the landing boat going to Normandy, you don't think about yourself. Right? But we get so caught up with so many different things about our lives, and the air conditioning isn't cool enough, and the heating's not hot enough, and the chairs aren't comfy enough, and the dinner wasn't tasty enough, and all kinds of other things. Right? We're caught up in such silly things. We were focused on what our real mission is all about, and all the suffering that's going on in the world, and how imperfect it is, and what we've got to do to fix it.
We seem to have a very great purpose now.
We have a very great purpose now. That's exactly right. Right? It's an incredible thing. When you live with purpose, you see how much easier it is to get along with people. Right? It's a different world. So to think that this happened is like God was not paying attention. This is obviously all from God. Look at what it's achieved. It's very easy to be destructive. It's very difficult to be creative. You don't accidentally be creative. You don't build anything by accident. Only the silly evolutionists think that such a thing is possible. It's not possible by accident to be creative. What this has done, in precise measure, obviously every drop of Jewish blood is precious. Every drop of blood is precious. But so this was precisely calculated, exactly what was needed to bring us all together. Not a single more than is necessary, not one less. The Almighty knows what He's doing. We're on track. We're coming together. This is a new world. Please God, soon. This is going to bring the Mashiach very, very quickly. We're definitely on the path.
May I ask a question? I'm sorry I missed the first part. You keep saying that this is a different world.
Yes.
I get that. Do people get that? Like when you're thinking at it from a worldwide perspective, do you think people get that?
Good question. No, I don't think they get that. But I don't know.
I'm seeing small signs. Like you're seeing small signs, like some countries coming out in support of Israel.
Yeah.
And right. In the past, they would have been on the opposite side. So, like, I'm seeing little small things here and there, and I'm just wondering, is that like the little snowball coming down the hill kind of thing?
Yeah.
And gaining speed.
There's some major significant stands that people are making, media are making. It's a dividing point between the evil and the good. When the light goes off, you not only see what you need, but you also see what you should stay away from. And so just like it's divided the tzaddikim who want to see and make the right choices, it's dividing the Rashayim now. The evil have become much clearer. We couldn't see it before. Right? Anybody who was, was thinking about it knew that Black Lives Matter was not a good organization by any stretch of the imagination. But now it's clear.
Right. It seems like it has created a certain clarity that we were slowly coming towards, but this quickly put it into focus.
A light went off. These people who died, the Kedoshim who died, brought great light into the world.
How's the humility relate to what happened?
Well, it was a lack of humility that led us down this path, that you could live with these evil people. Any reading of the time, I remember this is years ago, I had a class here in Washington, and Rabin's son was in the class. He lived in Virginia at the time. And I went through the Torah proving that the Palestinians, like, it was like clear, boom, 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 how this is all terrible and it's going to end in disaster. I brought all the verses. He didn't expect this class. He was just coming to the class, right? And I knew it was going to be in the class. I thought, I'll do something on Israel as a change. And he'll find it interesting, because it's like showing how the Bible's current and it's dealing with all the same issues and everything. He was so upset. He was like, this is what you're teaching, right? To teach people to hate people, right? He was so upset because they wanted to believe that that we figured it out, and you religious, old world, black, demonic, antiquated. You don't get love and friendship and warmth if you have acceptance, and we all hold each other's hand and drink a Coca-Cola, we'll all be happy. And they didn't want to accept it for 70 years. And there's still people that won't accept it. Yair Lapid, mind-boggling, having a unity government, and he won't join it.
That's because he's still in his ego. He's still in, this is what I want, and this is the world I want to see, and I want to make it that way. Exactly. And I'm not willing to be part of this new world. So goodbye to him. He just lost all relevance. He's
That's
meaningless
exactly
now.
Right. But you see, it's just made it clear where people are. Thank God. You see, another thing. Thank God this happened on Netanyahu's watch. This is. Oh, yeah. Could you imagine 6 months ago, Yair Lapid was there?
Well, Hashem wouldn't do that to us. I mean, that
would be horrendous. Right? Then it would be, we're going to drop flyers all over the Gaza Strip. If you don't release the people, we're going to be, right? Right from the beginning, Hamas said, we're going to start killing the hostages if you don't stop the the bombings without warning, right? Like Hamas expected Israel to warn them when they're going to bomb a building.
Because that's what they used to do.
But no country does that. No country, when they see someone, I mean, when they did it the last few times, I was pulling my hair out. Like, how can you be so stupid? You don't care about the building, you care about the people. So that's what they would do. They would send a signal, we're going to bomb this building, get out.
Rabbi Bars, for some reason, I keep thinking Hanukkah. I'm not sure why. I remember hearing the story that I didn't hear when I was younger. It took several decades before I heard this, that the sister of the Hashmonaim, the brothers, that she was going to get married, and because of their horrendous enactments that the Greeks put on the Jews, she was supposed to go to the Greek governor first before she went to her husband. And so she knew what was going to happen. There was a party. She came down naked. And the brothers got so upset and they wanted to kill her. And she said, "Excuse me? You want to kill me because I'm not clothed, but you have no problem with sending me to the governor? Where the heck is your morality? What have you become used to? You got used to a certain, do you see where you are?" I think she created a certain clarity as well by shocking them.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. As per usual, it's the women that save the day.
At least for the two holidays that are besides the regalim, right?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, that's the whole point. We get used to the abuse. We get used to the insanity. We get used to it. And there's nothing you can do. Right? I mean, Rav Noah, you had to tie him down with cords. He would go crazy. I mean, I get upset, but he would just go crazy when they would give up, hand over terrorists, or they would just let it go crazy. This crazy. They don't realize what they're doing. Now they get it, but it's a painful way to learn. But it's a different world order. It's not the same anymore. It's not the same. The next government, I hope there's going to be another election soon, and they're going to vote in a very right-wing government. There's going to be a lot of fun people in it, and it's going to be a different world.
Rabbi, that's low. I'm reaching up high. I'm expecting Mashiach soon. No more governments. We've got Mashiach, and I'm all good.
Well, that's definitely true.
No more.
That's part of what this has created, is the realization that government is see, people think democracy is a terrible system. It's not a meaningful way of running the country. All it is just, instead of appointing a king for life, you're appointing a king for 4 years or whatever his term happens to be. It's not better. It's not more enlightened. It's just, hoping, it's like musical chairs, hoping that the president you have in this time, or the prime minister you have in this time, is the right one for the crisis that you're going to be meeting. It's like musical chairs. You're crazy.
Dayenu, Rabbi, Dayenu, we've had enough. We're done.
We had enough, right? It's time to have a king, a proper king. But that's to be discussed. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, all good news. Good news very, very soon.
Amen.
Amen.